Johnson is a professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and an MSNOW political analyst. And Amanda Litman is the co-founder and president of Run for Something. They join me now. It's good to see you both.
Good to see you.
What did you think about the conversation I just had with Abdul El-Sayed, Professor?
It literally sounds like the people and family members that I've talked to in suburban Detroit. There are splits within families, splits within communities, not hostile ones. But there were a lot of people, certainly in the African-American community, the super voters, the 55 and above, who are like, look, Haley Stevens, she has more experience. I'm more comfortable with her. And I think that white voters in the upper part of the state will be more comfortable with her. And then you had other people saying, look, we need change. We have to do something different. Mike Rogers is more the same. We have to do something different. So I think if Abdul Saeed can get those couples to say, hey, look, we both want Trump out, we both want to stop him, I think he's got a chance this fall.
Is what you heard, Amanda, from him 5 minutes ago going to speak to the voter that I met there outside the polling place in Northwest Detroit? I think
it's a starting point. He's clearly coming at this with a very different tone than he took in the primary, where he was very sharp elbows, a little bit cocky, a little bit, if you're not with me, you're against me. I thought his tone in your conversation with him was a little more gracious. It was a little bit more about, we're going to welcome people into this movement. It's not about who I'm campaigning with. It's about who I'm campaigning for. And he found a way to work in money out of politics into your pocket, Medicare for all, I don't know, a half dozen times. He is going to hammer that home in a way that really breaks through.
He is incredibly disciplined on message on those three particular points. What does it tell you? I was looking at the data about where he performed strongly, in particular in areas with a lot of black and working class voters. Stevens did well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what does that tell you about, obviously not just Stevens, but about maybe what he missed in the primary election?
Well, again, African-American voters are the most practical voters in the Democratic coalition. And oftentimes a decision, you could see this with Barack Obama, you could see this with Kamala Harris. Oftentimes, black voters make the decision on who's going to be best for me and who do I think white folks will vote for, right? And so that was the assumption that Abdul Saeed would not do well enough with white voters. If you look at it, the majority didn't vote for him, right? If you look at Haley Stevens, you look at the third candidate who came in third. So that's where the apprehension comes in. But the overall energy is we want Trump out. The overall energy is whatever we've got to do to keep this seat blue, that's going to end up helping him.
And that is so true. I talked to a lot of young people. It was mostly young people who would say, I'm going to sit out if my preferred candidate didn't win. It was certainly not the older voters. Right. Part of this thing was, as I said in the introduction, is that there was so much misinformation and disinformation because of the amount of money that was spent in the campaign. Tens of millions of dollars on behalf of Stevens, virtually none in terms of these outside groups for El-Sayed. It was very confusing, including to me as a journalist who went there to cover it when I did not catch that in real time when she said the president has endorsed. What kind of, I wanted to ask the candidate this, El-Sayed tonight, but what is he up against? What is this landscape that he's now going into, knowing that AIPAC, the Republicans, they're going to be spending as much, if not more, money in this general election?
Well, he's got to make sure that the person voters hear about does not reflect the person that they meet at events, that he is everywhere, omnipresent in their day-to-day life, especially in the communities that might be a little more skeptical of him. So older black communities, working class communities, Jewish Michiganders, making sure that what they see on TV does not match that reality.
Oh, he's talking about going to shul. He's talking, I heard all that.
Shabbat shalom.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's the thing. He already has one message that makes sense, and he is a healthcare official. I was looking at some of the data. You now have the insurers in the state of Michigan have gone to the legislator saying, look, we're going to have to increase rates next year, like 9% for group plans and 12% for individual plans. That's 800,000 Michiganders. If you're coming out there saying, hey, Medicare for all and your medical bills are too expensive, I'm going to hear that more than who you are and what he said, what you're praying for. He has a message on healthcare that I think resonates in particular in a state like that.
I went back and listened to actually Chris, whose seat I'm keeping warm tonight, did this incredible podcast with Abdul El-Sayed back in 2018 after he had lost the race for governor, and talked to him about his healthcare plan, not just Medicare for all that he supported nationwide, but he had something called Michicare that was part of his campaign for governor. And you're so right that he's a doctor, he's never practiced, but he was also a public health official for a very long time. He ran the system in the city of Detroit, and he knows this thing in a way that I have not heard many people talk about when it comes to universal health care. Yeah. What does that mean to voters to hear somebody speak from that level of sort of subject matter expertise?
I think it's going to lend him a ton of credibility. He clearly knows his stuff. He's an excellent, especially science communicator, healthcare communicator. And I think one of the things he's going to have to his benefit going into the general is Barack Obama is probably going to endorse him this time around. He's going to have all of those, Michigan elected officials, Gretchen Whitmer, Haley Stevens herself, who have already shown that they are all in to beat Mike Rogers. I think today has really been a model in how you conclude a very rancorous primary. they're going to have to go in front of cameras and say, he can win. We've got his back, and make sure that what they were saying for the last 6 months is no longer true.
Yeah, there was that statement from Stevens today. There's a unity breakfast, I think, that's on Friday, which I think is going to be really interesting to see. I want to read you, Professor, some of the stuff that Republicans are calling him. They're calling him a communist. They're calling him an anti-Semite. Trump today called him a quote-unquote a man of hate. Are these attacks that are going to land with Michiganders?
They're going to land with people who are Republicans already. I don't think they're going to change things, right? Like when you talk about the kinds of people who pay attention, I saw your interview with Marcus Johnson. Love that kid, right? I was like, as a college professor, those young people, when they see that he was able to beat the system, because they're the people who are seeing the online misinformation.
Yes.
They're going to break through it. They're going to say,
by the way, Marcus Johnson, forgive me for interrupting you, is from Oakland County, Oakland University, where Abdul El-Sayed is also from.
Exactly. So most of that misinformation is going to come online. It's going to be hitting young people. They're like, I don't want to hear this. They're going to bat it away like the Matrix. It's not going to matter to them. And for the older voters who are cynical, they've already decided if this is a change election or not. So I don't think that hurts them that much.
Before we go, Jocelyn Benson, is now the Democratic candidate for governor. She's popular. She's so well known. She absolutely smashed in the primary. Do you think her coattails will help El-Sayed?
Can't hurt. They've got to be running a tight, coordinated campaign. They've got to be campaigning together. They've got to be aligned. I think their messages really complement each other. But they've got to prove that it's not just in name-only partnership. It's on the ground, organizers working together, top to bottom.
I was so impressed by everybody I met, including Mr. Baxter, who I want to shout out again, who runs the elections in Detroit. It was an incredible operation. I could talk about this all night. I'm going to go back to Michigan for sure. It's good to see both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Jason Johnson, Amanda Litman. We'll do this again.